Ever get that feeling, that like something's just off,
Hmm.
like a tiny crack in what you thought was your picture perfect life.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of how this story starts.
Okay.
We're doing a deep dive into this case that,
Yeah.
it really reminds us how easily things can spiral
Yeah.
from a totally normal or seemingly ordinary divorce
Right.
into a terrifying plot.
Oh, wow.
We're talking hidden lives, dangerous secrets, and it's a chilling reminder
Yeah.
that sometimes the people closest to us
Yeah.
can be the ones that we know the least about.
Absolutely.
So if you've ever felt that unease about someone you thought you knew, this deep dive is going to send shivers right down your spine.
It's so true. And what's fascinating here is how it all unfolds. This all starts in Charleston, South Carolina back in 2013.
Okay.
And picture this,
Huh?
charming cobblestone streets, antebellum architecture,
Right.
that classic Southern hospitality.
Yeah.
But, beneath the surface, there's this legal system with a really unique twist. Back then, South Carolina had these fault-based divorce laws,
Interesting.
which meant that adultery wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a legal battleground
Oh, wow.
with some really serious financial consequences.
Okay, so that's where our story really kicks off. We're going to unpack the case of Nancy Lamb, a woman who found herself caught in a web of deceit. So tangled, it's hard to believe it's not straight out of a movie.
Yeah, it all began when Nancy and her husband Chris decided to split.
Mm-hmm.
Sad, sure, but not uncommon,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
But Nancy started noticing some red flags, like she found those little blue pills, the ones prescribed to someone else,
Oh, yeah.
or stumbling across those late-night texts that just didn't add up.
Right.
And, Nancy's a resourceful woman,
Yeah.
so she decided to dig a little deeper.
And by dig deeper, we mean she used passwords to access Chris's phone and email.
Exactly.
Pretty savvy for 2013, right?
Right. I mean, especially back then.
Yeah.
But what she uncovered wasn't just your typical midlife crisis fling. It was the beginning of a nightmare.
Oh, gosh.
So the first suspect was actually a woman Nancy knew, another bank executive's wife.
Oh, wow.
Let's call her Wendy number 1 to keep things clear.
Okay.
So Nancy went so far as to hire not 1, but 3 private investigators.
3?
3, that's right. And they caught Chris and Wendy number 1. Red-handed on what was supposed to be Nancy's trip to New York City.
What?
Yeah, he even replaced her at this important cocktail party.
Talk about rubbing salt in the wound.
Ouch, right.
But as the divorce proceedings got underway, Chris wasn't exactly playing by the rules. He cut off Nancy's credit cards, left her with a measly $300 check, and turned what was supposed to be an amicable separation into a full-blown legal war.
And here's the puzzle. If South Carolina law essentially rewarded the breadwinner for proving their spouse's adultery, why wouldn't Chris just admit to it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
He stood to gain financially from it. There had to be something more he was hiding, something he was desperately trying to protect.
Okay, hold on to your hats, folks,
Mm-hmm.
because this is where a second Wendy enters the picture. And trust me, this one is a game changer.
Wendy number 2. She was Chris's executive assistant.
Okay.
And as you might have guessed, she became the new woman in his life.
Oh, geez.
And what's interesting is Nancy actually first encountered her during a deposition,
Oh, wow.
completely unaware of her true significance.
Oh, my.
It wasn't until later that the pieces really started falling into place.
And those pieces came from a really unexpected source, Wendy number 2's ex-husband, Matt. During a meeting with Nancy, he just dropped a bombshell.
Oh, wow.
Turns out Wendy had a past, one that involved an adult entertainment business, run with her former husband, a man named Sammy Yenawine.
Okay.
Now, you might think Nancy's first instinct was to expose this scandalous past, right?
Yeah.
But instead, she saw it as leverage in the divorce proceedings.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it's morally complicated, for
Yeah.
sure. But after everything she'd been through, can you blame her for wanting to fight fire with fire?
I guess not.
So here's where it gets really creepy. One night, Nancy drives by the beach house Chris is staying at and sees him playing Happy Families with Wendy number 2 and her children.
Oh,
It
no.
was like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of everything she'd lost.
Oh, that's awful.
But as devastating as that was, it was just a glimpse of the storm that was about to engulf her life.
Oh, my gosh.
And this storm wasn't brewing from her soon-to-be ex-husband, but from people she barely even knew.
Oh.
Remember that feeling of unease we talked about at the beginning?
Yeah.
The one that, like, something's just not right.
Uh,
Well, for Nancy, that feeling was about to explode into
Right.
a full-blown nightmare.
Because, unbeknownst to Nancy, a plan was already in motion.
No?
A plan so chilling it would send shockwaves through Charleston's, quiet facade.
Oh, wow.
A plan that involved something called a hit packet.
Now I know what you're thinking. Hit packet. That sounds like something out of a spy thriller. Yeah.
Exactly, and in a way it was. Imagine detailed photographs of Nancy, her daily routine, the layout of her home,
Oh, God.
even instructions for potential assassins on how to enter her house undetected.
So it was like a blueprint for murder.
It really was.
And the mastermind behind it, none other than Sammy Anawine, Wendy No. 2's ex-husband, with this shady past.
The one and only.
But here's where fate and some good police work intervened.
Okay.
Sammy had a partner in crime, a guy named Aaron Wilkinson, who, as luck would have it, was already cooperating with the ATF on a completely unrelated case.
Oh, wow, what a coincidence.
I know, right? Wilkinson's cooperation proves to be like a total game changer.
How so?
Well, he spilled the beans about the hit packet, which led the ATF straight to Sammy Anawine.
So the ATF, working quickly and strategically, they set up surveillance on Sammy, and they eventually apprehended him in Kentucky.
But Wendy Moore, the woman who allegedly orchestrated this whole terrifying scheme, was still in Charleston, seemingly living her best life with Chris.
And the ATF agents, they decided to pay her a visit at Chris Lamb's beach house.
Interesting.
They didn't have enough to arrest her at that point, but they wanted to, see how she'd react, maybe even get a confession out of her.
And what was her reaction?
Well, let's just say it was unexpected.
Okay.
So when they confronted her, Wendy initially played it cool, even asked for a lawyer. But then, in a move that left even the seasoned ATF agents baffled, she turned to one of them and said, "I know you guys probably don't like me very much, but I could sure use a hug."
A hug. Are you serious?
I know, right?
Here she is, potentially implicated in a murder-for-hire plot. And she's fishing for sympathy hugs from federal agents.
It's a bizarre detail, but it speaks volumes about her personality.
Yeah, like what?
Like a kind of manipulative charm, maybe, that allowed her to influence people, to get what she wanted no matter the cost.
Wow. But while Wendy was busy working her manipulative magic, Nancy and her daughters were living a completely different reality.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine living under virtual lockdown, constantly looking over your shoulder,
Yeah.
terrified for your safety and the safety of your children.
Their lives were completely upended.
I can't even imagine.
They had to move from safe house to safe house.
Oh my God.
Be able to return to their own home. Keys.
Their every move dictated by security protocols. The emotional toll on all of them was immense.
Heartbreaking. And all the while, Chris Lamb, the man at the center of this twisted love triangle, was seemingly living his life as if nothing had happened. He was still working at the bank, still playing the role of the, doting father figure to Wendy Moore's children.
The ATF, though, they had a plan. They allowed Chris to remain free. And they used that time to gather evidence, to build a really rock-solid case against everyone involved.
That's a high-stakes gamble.
For sure, but one that would ultimately pay off.
And while the ATF was building their case, Nancy was just trying to piece together how her life had spun so wildly out of control, how had a seemingly ordinary divorce spiraled into this terrifying plot against her life.
And what role had Chris, the man she once loved, played in all of this? It's just hard to imagine the emotional roller coaster that Nancy and her daughters were on.
Yeah.
I mean, they were living in a state of constant fear. Their lives were completely disrupted, all because someone wanted Nancy dead.
It's a stark contrast to the life that Chris Lamb was leading.
Right.
While Nancy's in hiding, he's going about his day, working at the bank, even acting as a father figure to Wendy Moore's children.
It just makes you wonder, what was going through his mind? Was he truly oblivious to this plot against Nancy? Or was he, somehow involved?
That's the question that really hung over the entire case. And while the ATF was building their case, they were also watching Chris, trying to determine his level of complicity.
I imagine that waiting game must have been agonizing for Nancy, knowing that the man who had, vowed to love and protect her was potentially involved in a plot against her life. I mean, it's a level of betrayal that's just hard to even fathom.
It really is. And all the while, she had to keep up appearances to protect her daughters from the full extent of the danger they were in.
Right.
Imagine having to explain to your kids why they can't go home, why they have to live with strangers, why they have armed guards following them everywhere.
It's heartbreaking, and it really underscores the ripple effects of this kind of crime. It's not just the intended victim who suffers, it's everyone they love.
It really does. It affects everybody. But even amidst the fear and the uncertainty, there was a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
Remember those burner phones and gloves that Aaron Wilkinson had mentioned?
Yeah.
Well, the ATF was busy connecting the dots.
Okay.
They obtained store video footage, confirming the purchase of those items, and they were able to link them directly to Sammy Yenawine.
Oh, wow.
They also uncovered bank records showing that Wendy Moore had wired thousands of dollars to Sammy right before he traveled to Charleston.
The evidence was mounting.
It sure was.
So the ATF had meticulously built their case, and it was time to make their move. Sammy Yenawine was apprehended in Kentucky, and Wendy Moore was given the opportunity to turn herself in.
But even when she was faced with arrest, Wendy maintained this, facade of innocence.
Wow.
It's a chilling reminder that, sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who can blend in seamlessly and manipulate those around them to achieve their own really twisted goals.
And what about Chris Lamb? After months of living under this cloud of suspicion, he was finally arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
The trial that followed was a media sensation.
I did.
Nancy was thrust into the spotlight, and she bravely recounted the harrowing details of her ordeal.
Wow.
It took immense courage for her to face her would-be killers in court and to really relive all of that trauma that she had to endure.
So in the end, justice was served.
Chris Lamb was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison.
10 years.
Wendy Moore received a lighter sentence of 5 years,
Okay.
while Sammy Yenawine was sentenced to 8.
But the scars of this experience run deep, right?
They do, yeah.
So Nancy and her daughters, though relieved that the ordeal was finally over, they were forever changed by the knowledge that someone they had once loved had betrayed them in the most unimaginable way.
It's unfathomable.
Well, this deep dive into Nancy Lamb's story has been a chilling reminder that things aren't always as they appear.
That's for sure.
It's a story about, the dark side of human nature, the lengths some will go to get what they want, and the devastating consequences of those actions.
Absolutely.
But it's also a story about resilience,
It is.
about the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most terrifying of circumstances.
For sure.
Well, if you found this episode as gripping as we did, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future deep dives, where we'll continue to explore the strange, the surprising, and sometimes the unsettling truths that lie hidden beneath the surface of everyday life.